Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
Welcome back to The Scoop, everybody. We are on to episode 23 of our 11th season. I'm your host, John DeCarlo, the editor of OurScoop.com, the authority on Temple athletics. I'm joined by our assistant editor, Kyle Gauss, today, along with our reporters, Colin Schofield and Ryan Mack. We do have a lot of football transfer portal news to bring to you, and we'll talk to you about the Temple men's basketball team's 7-game win streak. They're playing very, very well. So we've got some good news to bring to you, but we, of course, do bring you this episode today with a lot of sad news to share and two incredible people that we want to honor here. So I'm sure you all know by now that Tuesday morning, Temple University announced the sudden passing of Temple men's basketball coach Bill Courtney, Temple men's basketball assistant coach Bill Courtney. He was just 55 years old. Bill joined Adam Fisher's staff back in June to replace Chris Clark and had spent the last 5 seasons as an assistant at Miami. He and Adam were very, very close and worked together under Jim Larrañaga at Miami. Bill stepped in last year as Miami's interim head coach for the final 19 games last season once Jim retired. He was the head coach at Cornell from 2010 to 2016. He was a standout player at Bucknell and was inducted into their Athletics Hall of Fame in 2007. He recruited so many of the key players on that George Mason 2006 Final Four team during his first stint under Jim Larrañaga, and then he helped Miami get to the 2023 Final Four, working with him again. He's survived by his 2 sons, Billy and DJ. DJ, I think he plays at Brandeis, and their mother, Gina. I cannot imagine what they're going through, and we're all certainly thinking of them, and of course thinking of Adam Fisher, Michael Huger, Bobby Jordan, Jimmy Pelosi. Michael and Jimmy worked with Bill down at Miami. If you follow Jimmy on social media, and by now I think you've seen so many of these social media tributes pouring in. Jimmy had this great video that he posted on Instagram that I shared of Bill cutting down his portion of the net during the 2023 Final Four, and just thinking of the entire Temple staff and their players who are playing Wednesday night at Memphis. So we will talk about that. So they are heading down there to play the game, obviously with some heavy, heavy hearts. And I think it's something that the players voted on and wanted to do for Adam and to honor Bill's memory. Back in July, Bill was kind enough to join me for an interview that we aired on The Scoop. And you can go back and listen to it. It was season 10, episode 50. That was the podcast with Bill. I want to play a clip here. This is something that you didn't hear in the podcast, and this was a part of our interview where he talks about just why he coaches. And one of the things that you hear people say, and as cliche as it can sound sometimes when people pass and people talk about someone having a positive spirit, Bill really, really was always smiling and always laughing, and he was such a joy to talk to when I interviewed him during the summer. And this is him talking about why he coached, and he just talked about just not really having to work a day in his life. So I want to play this for you here before we move along. Jim has said before that you brought him all the good players who helped George Mason get to that 2006 Final Four, and then you obviously helped craft a good portion of those Miami rosters too. He even said, and I quote, "I wouldn't have been able to stay in coaching if I had not met him 28 years ago." So that's really high praise. So I'll ask you to brag about yourself here. What has made you a good recruiter and a good coach and developer of players? Because again, I know you've known Jim for a long time, but that's really high praise for someone to say that about you.
Well, I don't like to drag about myself. I don't really, enjoy taking credit for things. But I say the one thing about me, especially in recruiting, is I'm going to tell you how it is. I'm going to tell you, if I don't believe in you as a player, I won't recruit you. It's hard for me to recruit guys I don't believe in. But if I believe in you, I'm going to go full bore. And I'm going to tell you all the things that you can accomplish. And that's the same thing I'm going to do here at Temple. I see some things in guys that can make them great in our system. And again, if I don't think you fit this system, I won't go at you that. I won't recruit you that way. But if I think you fit this, I'm going to really, really go at you. And I'm a positive person. I normally have a smile on my face. I normally enjoy what I'm doing. I'm not a guy that's going to be down a lot. And, hopefully I'm a guy that people enjoy being around.
Tell me about your earliest basketball memory growing up. What got you into the game?
Well, I love the game since I was a little kid. Since I was 6 years old, I remember making my first basket on a regulation hoop. at Patrick Henry Rec Center in Alexandria, Virginia. And, I've been in love with the game ever since. Spending time as a kid, just, watching NBA games, loving NBA players. I've always loved the game. I knew I wanted to coach college basketball my senior year of high school. I knew that was my path in life, and I was fortunate enough to be able to do that after my playing career was over. I've never worked a day in my life, really. Honestly, I haven't had a job. I've been fortunate to be around great people in this business, have lifelong friends, lifelong relationships, and it's shaped every part of my life.
So we'll obviously be talking about Bill Courtney's impact through the rest of the season. And again, really just wish those guys well as they move forward to play down at Memphis in an important basketball game. We're going to talk more Temple basketball. They're going for their 8th win in a row down at Memphis, playing the Memphis Tigers. In addition to losing Bill Courtney, we want to honor someone else who passed. We lost a member of our Al Scoop family to Matt Vender, one of our former staff members who was a terrific reporter and writer and just such a wonderful person, passed away suddenly back on December 29th. He was just 28 years old, and I still can't believe that I'm reading this right now. And if I can't believe it, I can't imagine what his father and his brother are going through right now. After he graduated from Temple, he moved on to what became a successful real estate career following in his father David's footsteps. Kyle and I stayed in touch with him via, group texts and group Instagram chats. And we just always had so much to laugh about because you just end up having these memories of, these road trips that we took together to cover games and, all the quirky people that you cover in this business. And again, he's survived by his younger brother, Ben, and his father, David. David lost his wife and Matt's mother, Suzanne, to cancer back in 2020. I had the honor of meeting her, and she was so sweet and so nice. And I know how close Matt was to his mother. So I can't imagine, again, what David and Ben have gone through and continue to go through now. And I remember, and this is the vibe that I always got from Matt, when I was sharing the news with Chelsea, when I found out last week, she was just shocked by it, and she was like, he was just very kind because he came over to our place a couple times, and somewhere, and I'm determined to find it, I think we have a picture of him holding our old dog Sam, and she was like, he just had very kind eyes, and she just kept saying you could tell he was really, really loved by his family. He was just so sweet, and man, he was just so funny. Kyle, when we found out about Matt's passing, you wrote this on our football board, and I thought this was really nice, and I want to kind of turn it over to you because I know you have some reflections on Matt as well. You wrote this on the football board. For anybody that's been on this site for a while, you know that Matt was everywhere during those years. While still in high school, he was at Cherry Hill East High School. He started covering recruiting for 24/7 Sports and, quite frankly, would just run circles around John and me. So we did what anybody would do. We stole him. It was one of the best decisions we ever made. And Kyle's right. And he covered recruiting well, covered football well, covered basketball well. Kyle, I was just hoping you could touch on that because A, you're right, and B, we just had so much fun
Right.
together.
Yeah, I mean, there was like a 5 or 6 year stretch there where probably seeing Matt like 2 or 3 times a day or 2 or 3 times a week, whether it's through, we used to record the scoop in person at your office a lot, just kind of huddled around what was originally just a Yeti microphone and eventually evolved from there. And then covering a lot of games with him, talking to him every day. Honestly, sometimes living vicariously through him. I mean, John and I, sorry if I get a little emotional.
Yeah, he was the best. He was the best. And I keep saying it, like if he affected us in this way, I can't imagine what his family's going through. I can't, because he was just so kind and so funny and so sweet. And we just had so much fun, even just sometimes like when he would come into the office before we would start recording, he just rolled with everything. He was just like, he would just smile and laugh. There were a few times where he would come in and he'd have a cold. I'd be like, why are you here? He would be just like clearly sick. And I'd be like, you sound terrible. And he'd be like, I'm fine. He loved it. He transferred into Temple. He was one of those guys who just wanted to be at Temple before he got to Temple. And the road trips were so much fun. Like, I just even remember, like, I was talking to Don about this. You remember when we went to Notre Dame and we were in a room with like a couple of beds and he's like, Don, I'll sleep next to you if you get lonely tonight. he was just he was the absolute best, and he was the kindest soul, and he was so good at his job. And
Didn't he get a speeding ticket on that game in the exact same spot going there and coming back?
so this was a different. I think they were coming back from an NCAA tournament
Oh
game
yeah,
at
right.
Dayton,
That's it.
and he got a speeding ticket on the way up and on the way back.
At the exact same spot. I don't think it was the
Yes.
same trooper, but it was the exact same speed trap. He just
Yes.
didn't learn. It just sped
Yeah.
through it. And then Graham
Um,
was just like live texting us like, "We are pulled over right now in the same spot."
mhm. I just,
Do you, do you
I don't know,
remember when
man.
he borrowed Bud Knapp's car and drove it up
Yes.
onto a median? So the
Yes.
car had two tires up on like
Hmm.
a stone retaining wall and two
Yes.
cars down.
Do you also, this is, I know we have a lot of stuff to get to, but we want to pay tribute to Matt. Do you remember when Chelsea still gets a kick out of this? Bud somehow saw me walking into the student center. He was sitting up in like the dining area, saw me walk into the student center, and he saw me stop and sneeze, and he got it on video, and he sent it to me, to you, and to Matt. And I was like, how did he see this? And we would just laugh about that stuff. He was just the very best. Kyle and I have talked about this. He was at the December 22nd Temple Princeton game
Right.
and messaged us to let him know that he saw Adam Dvorin. I have since emailed that to Adam Dvorin. There are energies in this world. Adam Dvorin emailed me. He's in the PR world. He teaches at Klein. He emailed me to say he was sorry. And I wrote back to Adam. I said, I need to send you the screenshot of Matt messaging Kyle and I on Instagram to say Temple superfan Adam Dvorin is here and he's wearing his Al Scoop hat. And he just was like, he was supposed to be moving from his father. David wrote this on his obituary on the funeral home's website. He had been living in Seattle. He was set to move home to Chicago. And again, a million people say it. There are people who leave this world too soon. There's never enough time. He was one of them. I still can't believe it. And I David Vender, if you are listening to this, you and your wife, you did an amazing job raising him. He was the best. He was an incredible guy, and he brought so much joy to our lives and like so much to our website. That seems trivial right now, but man, he was such a good reporter and writer, and just was always willing to help. And like, I remember when we said like, "Hey, do you want to come work for us?" He was like, "I always wanted to come work for you guys." And I was like, "Oh my God!" Like he was
I think
just
he called it his dream job.
yeah. I mean,
Really?
he was just the best. He loved dogs. He loved people. He was just always smiling. He just had like this great like self-deprecating sense of humor. I think he was on the pod. I mean, he was on. He did like what 3 seasons with us. He was on when you went on your Jim Boeheim rant, and just like
Yes, he was there.
just super funny and witty. So we love you, buddy. If you have access to the scoop up in heaven, like hope you are listening. You
I'll
probably
check the Podbean stats and see
you
if we get
have better. We get some downloads from heaven. We know it's you. But we just love you immensely, and our lives are better because of you. And this is just what happens. We get to work with a lot of incredible people, including the guys that are on the scoop with us today, and Colin and Ryan. And so we're very lucky. So wanted to honor those guys. And again, our hearts go out to the Temple basketball community and Bill Courtney's family. I just simply cannot imagine what they are going through. So thanks for giving us the time to get through that and honor those people. There's no good way to
And now it's the
segue
transfer portal.
segue into the rest of the pod here. But the scoop is brought to you by our friends at Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you're injured while on the road or the highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company is not going to be on your side. You need us. Temple Law grads will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win. So in Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. That's 215-261-7359. And you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com. That's greenspans-law.com. We'll remind you again, and it's the perfect time to remind you, We've got a new subscriber sale with On3 and owlscoop.com for you to take advantage of. Get 50% off of OwlScoop and On3 and Rivals right now for the latest transfer portal intel. There's been a ton of it, especially on our message boards. We've talked to several of the guys that are joining the football program now. You can interact with fellow Temple fans and get the latest football and basketball scoop, and you'll still get that full year of access to the Athletics. So it's a great deal to take advantage of right now, especially with everything going on with the football transfer portal. Speaking of, boy, we got a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. So since we spoke with you last week, Temple has found 2 quarterbacks in the portal. Penn State transfer Jaxon Smolik and former Rutgers and Washington State quarterback Ajani Sheppard. I wrote about Jaxon Smolik over the weekend. OwlScoop subscribers have first crack at that one-on-one interview with Jaxon Smolik. He's a former Elite 11 quarterback, and we'll see. Maybe the early favorite to emerge as Temple's next starter. He's got an intriguing skill set. He initially committed to Tulane and then was a late Elite 11 invite, played well there, got offers from Cal and Penn State, and then eventually flipped to Penn State. He's dealt with a couple of injuries at Penn State. He got injured in the 2024 spring game, right? Wouldn't have been this past. Yes. So was on track to really compete to be the backup. I'm not sure
if it was the spring game or spring practice.
Spring practice. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if it was the spring game.
I hope not. I imagine
I think it was a spring. Spring practice, tore his ACL, and then moved up the depth chart, once Drew Aller was out for the season this year. But an intriguing addition for him, for Temple, I should say. I'll play this part. This is part of our interview. I talked to him over the weekend, not long after he committed, and then we'll kind of decompress a little bit about Jaxon Smolik and the quarterback position. We're not going to be able to get to every player here, but they've reinforced the defensive line. They really found a way to get some Penn State transfers here, 4 by last count. But I'm going to play this clip. This is part of my interview with Jaxon Smolik, and then we'll talk a little bit more about him and Ajani Sheppard on the other side and get into some of the other portal players as well.
When I first got there, I was talking to coaches, I already liked him a bunch. When I started watching the tape with Coach Walker a little bit, and I saw the similarities and the things I ran, and it's a lot of this kind of the same stuff that I was really good at, and they just kind of talked about it different. And me and Coach Walker were talking about the stuff. He's like, "Yeah, man, same stuff," and the way he reads the plays and the way his terminology is. It all just clicks for me really well, and that's what I think really made me happy with my decision. And kind of right there, I was like, man, especially with the weapons coming back here and this offense, I know I can learn really well. So that's kind of when it clicked for me when we were first going over their offensive philosophy and their scheme.
Kyle, what do you think of this? Because I think that the fan reaction, for whatever it was worth, was kind of interesting. And I get, they wanted their first clear preference was Mason McKenzie. They wanted somebody with starting experience. Mason McKenzie, as we said last week, committed to Boston College on his visit. Then they took their shot at Arrington Maiden, the Memphis backup, who would have had a similar profile to Jaxon Smolik, not the same player, a guy with potential, but hadn't really started games yet. They brought him in for a visit. From what we understand, they thought he was going to commit. Then he flaked at the last minute. So, obviously I'm sure that their recruiting department had a depth chart of people that they wanted to get to. So I think there's a segment of the fan base that was our message board saying, okay, I'm intrigued by Jaxon Smolik, but sure wish we could have gotten a guy like Mason McKenzie, who was a proven starter. I like Jaxon Smolik's skill set. We've heard a couple of McSorley comparisons, and I think if that's how he turns out, I think Temple's in pretty good hands. What do you think of all this now that the quarterback picture is clear? Because now they have 6 scholarship quarterbacks now they're going to be on the roster. Jaxon Smolik, Ajani Sheppard. You have the 3 freshmen who are coming in, Brody Norman, Brady Palmer, Lamar Best. Lamar Best is coming in this summer. As we've been telling you, Brody Norman and Brady Palmer are coming in mid-year. And then Cam Boykin still remaining. He'll be a redshirt freshman. But now that this is settled, Kyle, how do you think this played out for him? What's your view of just how this all went down?
Yeah, I don't know if you can give obviously an accurate assessment of how it played out until later on. But, I think for anyone that's arguing that they want something more of a proven commodity, these are the same people that got all pissed off when they took Rutgers backup quarterback Evan Simon 2 years ago, and that worked out pretty well. So I think Jaxon Smolik, honestly, if he was at Tulane, if Jaxon Smolik was at Ferris State or any of these D3 schools, he would have put up just as good as numbers as Trinidad Chambliss and Mason McKenzie. Like, the fact of the matter is he was behind a potential Heisman Trophy guy going into it in Drew Aller, and a quarterback in Ethan Grunkmeyer, who's now at Virginia Tech. So 2 Power 4 level starting quarterbacks were the guys ahead of him. I think when it comes to things like this, when you go off of recruiting profiles and guys that haven't really had the opportunity to show it yet, which is him and Ajani Sheppard, those are scenarios where other programs that, quite frankly, are more successful and have done this better than Temple determined that those guys were good enough to play quarterback for them. Like, Penn State recruited Jaxon Smolik after he was like a top 8 guy at the Elite 11. Tulane, who is the best program in the conference, he was the quarterback of that class until he flipped to Penn State. Like, I just tend to think that, yeah, it's easy. Would you prefer that a guy that threw for 4,000 yards and was number 3 in the Heisman or whatever decides that he wants to come to North Philadelphia? Then sure. But, like, that's not going to happen.
No.
I think they raised the ceiling of the room. I think they also raised the floor of the room. Like, I think Jaxon Smolik, if he is the day one starter, if he ends up being the starting quarterback, I don't think it's going to be a situation where, 5-6 years ago when they bring in some Power 4, Power 5 level transfers that, quite frankly, just could not play quarterback at the American level. I don't get that impression from Jaxon Smolik whatsoever. I think athletically, he runs like a 4.6 40. He matches what they want to do. He's not going to be Michael Vick out there, but he can absolutely not just extend plays, but like be a weapon on the ground game. And I think he has the arm strength to also just be there. It's just going to come down to, decision making. And quite frankly, like, I hate to say that he's injury prone because they're 2 completely different injuries. Like, he injured his hand and he tore his ACL. Those are 2 very different injuries. It's not like he kept re-injuring the same thing, but he needs the opportunity to get healthy, stay healthy, and get some reps. But I think the ceiling of Jaxon Smolik is higher than the ceiling of some quarterbacks that Temple's had in the past.
Yeah, and I think that if, again, OwlScoop subscribers get full access to our entire conversation from the weekend, and of course I asked him about the injuries, and he said, honestly, I know a lot of players tend to say this now, it kind of tells you how, medicine is advanced. He said, I actually feel more explosive now after the ACL. I think that Temple fans are really going to connect with this guy. And I would honestly say the same thing about when I had the chance to talk to Brady Palmer, Brody Norman. Haven't had the chance to interview Lamar Best yet. Cam Boykin's a really nice kid when I've talked to him. But I think that, just talking to Jaxon for about 20 minutes, he's got some of like the characteristics. I mean, Evan's his own unique person, but Jaxon really talks actively about loving the position, getting better, was super easy to talk to. Had a funny part of our conversation. If you listen for subscribers, he talked about music. He's like, what kind of music do you think I would like? And he starts talking about 90s rock and stuff. I think this fan base is going to connect to him. And, and again, we haven't had the chance to talk to Ajani Sheppard yet, a guy that has very much played sparingly, start off at Rutgers. I don't know that Rutgers has done the best job of, we don't cover that program. I don't know if they've done the best job of managing their quarterbacks, but he ended up transferring to Washington State, started off 4th on their depth chart there. He's seeing this as an opportunity to come in, and he had a really good high school career, up at Iona Prep. So Ryan, Colin, what do you guys think of how this process played out?
I don't think it played out too terribly for Temple. I'm going to kind of echo everything you said, John and Kyle. Like, I think they're connected with Jaxon Smolik well. He was at Penn State for a reason as a recruit. Like, I think he was behind Power 4 guys, like really good quarterbacks in Grunkmeyer and Drew Aller. Now with the chance for Smolik to potentially play in the American Conference, where we've seen like quarterbacks be able to go to the Power 4 level from the American, I think he has a chance to, do well for Temple, and even Ajani Sheppard as well. It's just 2 guys who really haven't gotten chances, but were like Power 4 level talents coming out of high school. And so, it's not that they maybe have the chance to prove themselves at Temple. Like, there's no reason to kind of not believe that they can come in and compete for the starting job and keep Temple competitive after Evan Simon.
Going into that, you guys kind of talk about just Tyler Walker and Casey Keeler, talk about the quarterback that they kind of wanted, the kind of quarterback that they brought Giovanni McCoy in to kind of be last year. If he had won that quarterback competition, Evan Simon's more of like a pocket passer, even though he's been able to use his legs. You kind of saw that sometimes earlier in the year. But being able to come in, fit the system that they want to run, like Colin said, neither of them really had the opportunity to kind of like showcase what they can do at their schools. But I feel like you do not go to a Power 4 school for nothing. You don't go to Penn State if you're not a good quarterback. I feel like he has talent to do so. He just needs to have the ability to show. And I think being here, he will have that platform to show that he has the ability to play.
I think, and to kind of wrap this up and move on to some of the other positions, for a year you tip your cap to the Temple coaching staff and say the term competition sounds so, as true as it is, it sounds so cliche at this point. It's everybody says competing, but I think that Casey Killer and Tyler Walker really did a good job of letting it play out, because I don't know if they've ever said as much, but you go out and you spend some money on Giovanni McCoy in the portal, and you bring in a quarterback who was at one point one of the best FCS quarterbacks in the entire country. In their mind, they probably thought that he was going to come in and win the job. And they truly let the competition play out. And it really did bring the best out in both those guys, and especially brought the best out in Evan. And then Kyle had said this, I think, a few episodes ago. There's a chance that Evan probably maybe kind of regressed back to the mean, and you saw a couple limitations here and there. Now, there were other things on the team that weren't, that weren't going well, especially, defensively and in the secondary. But the staff has been able to say, like, hey, we are really going to let you come in and compete. And who knows what it's going to bring out in either one of those guys. But Ryan, you're right. Like, when these guys do end up first at Power 4 programs, everybody swings and misses sometimes, but 9 times out of 10, they don't end up there by accident. So the quarterback picture is complete. Kyle told you all not to panic last week, and he told you it was early. Kudos, Kyle. You were right. I know you like hearing that every once in a while.
Kudos, Kyle.
Let's talk a little bit about, again, we can't go up and down the entire roster, but they got some other good players from Penn State. Caleb Artis, Colin Dinkins, Joey Schlaffer. These are guys who were recruited at a high level at one point. I thought it was kind of funny that Joey Schlaffer, a guy from the Reading area, he actually popped up on a highlight on ESPN. I think it was Monday night. Scott Van Pelt was doing some sort of segment on like betting lines and how other teams ruined the spread late. They mentioned that Penn State Villanova game, and I think that was his first touchdown of the season. They got John Stone from Rutgers, a South Jersey guy. You can read that story on our website. But let's talk about some of these Penn State guys, because coaching changed there. We knew that they needed to really retool the front and back end of that defense. What do you think of some of the Penn State pickups, Kyle?
Yeah, I think it's kind of been the, not cliche, but sort of cliche like thing over the past couple of years, where Temple fans look and they go, well, Tulane always gets like LSU bounce backs, and FAU and USF gets Florida State and Florida kids. Why isn't Temple getting Penn State and Rutgers and all this? This class should shut them up. Like, this feels like they've done a healthy combination of bringing up FCS guys as well as just like Power 4 bounce backs that have regional ties. I think the Penn State guys are interesting. Beyond obviously, the obviousness of Jaxon Smolik, I think that Schlaffer has a role, maybe not necessarily in this year, but like these are all guys that have multiple years of eligibility at the tight end and quarterback position. The ones that stand out is just like immediate, these guys are going to make impact this year from Penn State, is I think you see a guy like Caleb Artis, who played a lot of like special teams for Penn State, was one of their just like guys. I think he'll find a role in the defensive line. I think you'll see Colin Dinkins, who was like their special teams guy. Like that guy played every unit of teams, was a gunner, was on return. Like I think did all those things. I think you'll continue to see him carve out. I don't know if that ends up being a role where he also sees time in like a base defense, but good. Like they're good, solid pickups. These are all guys from the region that are sticking around. I don't know if that contributed to Jaxon Smolik's decision. It probably didn't hurt. That you got guys that you're familiar with. It seems like him and Schlaffer are friendly. They're friends at the least. So, I think it's interesting. I think it's kind of a good opportunity. Like Casey Killer's talked about how one of the things they had going for them in high school recruiting was that they were one of the few like stable teams in the conference. And I think that also helps in transfer portal. If you're a guy looking for one more year of eligibility or that, like a place that's in my home region that has a stable force in the coaching staff, they haven't seen any turnover in their coaching staff yet. I think that's obviously a selling point for the program.
It was one of the things that Jaxon Smolik talked about. He said, with the weapons that we have coming back, and I think I might have asked him more or less, like, was that a selling point, or were you kind of surprised by that, given the fact that other programs have gotten rated. And he said, yeah, it just kind of speaks to the coaching staff. And so why am I blanking on this? Diego Barajas comes back, or is he out of
No,
eligibility?
he's out. They have
Oh,
he's the only guy they lost from the
that's
offensive
right.
line.
Yeah.
All their receivers, like, yeah, they lost Kajai Holloway. I feel like they did a
Mm-hmm.
good job replacing him with Jace Freeman.
Mm-hmm.
The tight ends are back. The running backs, like, yeah, you did lose your best running back in a couple of years in Jay Ducker, but there's guys that you can easily forecast that you think, Kevion Mason is going to take that leap. I think I should have made this point in the last thing. I don't think they need, like, Cam Ward back there. They need just a guy to come in and run the offense. And Jaxon Smolik in the interview, not to give too much away, refers to himself as like a point guard.
Yep.
That's all they need.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle pointed out, since we last recorded, Peter Clark announced that he's coming back. Eric King's going to be coming back. So at right tackle, you can see, depending on how things play out with some of the other portal guys, Luke Watson now has some competition there. Again, John Stone told me that he's coming in to compete with Grayson Maines for that starting center spot. So Grayson Maines has brought some stability there, but sure, there were times during the year where like the interior of the offensive line struggled. So you'd like to think that you got your quarterback or quarterbacks. And we're going to talk more about the portal in the mailbag. We've got some questions there, but if you're an Al Scoop subscriber, again, check out Ryan's story on Samuel Brown V, the former LaSalle College High School running back who's transferring in from Rutgers. Gives them a guy with experience, albeit a guy who had a knee injuries, had some injuries. So, but he adds some experience to a room that includes, again, a couple of freshmen that they're excited about. So we will talk more about the portal. We've got a couple of mailbag questions in there. So we're not done talking about the football portal pickups just yet.
Not quite. Not quite yet.
So as we mentioned at the outset of the show, Temple, albeit, of course, with heavy hearts with Bill Courtney's passing, is still flown down to Memphis to play the Tigers. So Temple is now 11-5 overall, 3-0 in the conference. This is Temple's first 7-game win streak in 11 years. So that game's at 8 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Memphis, as Kyle mentioned last week, they do what they do. They play the tough non-conference schedule, but they're 7-8. They're coming off an 89-78 loss to FAU. I had the chance to talk to Bobby Jordan on Monday, and again, just some context here. This was before Bobby found out about Bill Courtney's passing, so you don't hear us talking about that there. This was before that unfortunate and tragic news came out. But I talked to Bobby about, as much as anything, what's been behind this 7-game win streak. He'll give you a good scouting report on Memphis. And, one of the first things I asked him was, ideally, do you fear everything in coaching, but the pennies ticked off. They're coming off a disappointing 11-point loss to FAU. They could be coming in ticked off with a chip on their shoulder, but I'll set the stage here for that. This is Bobby Jordan talking about the win streak, previewing Memphis, talking about how they're obviously short on guard depth, and that's not going to change for the rest of the year. We will continue to tell you that AJ Smith is, it hasn't been formally announced yet, but you will most likely hear Adam Fisher say something after the Memphis game that AJ Smith is not coming back unless something dramatically unforeseen changes. They're not going to get CJ Hines this year, so it is what it is. They're going to get more out of Messiah Gilliard, out of Cam Wallace. So talked about a lot of that stuff and more with Bobby Jordan. We'll play this interview here for you, and then we'll have more men's hoops talk on the other side. Bobby, thanks for taking some time to talk. I appreciate it. So we'll start off with this. Silver Waves Media put you on its list of the top 100 most impactful mid-major assistant coaches and general managers. I know you don't have much of an ego and you don't coach for awards, but still nice to be recognized. What does this mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was very humbling to be recognized on that list. And, all the credit goes to, the guys that I've worked for, and Adam Fisher and Bruiser Flint and Bashir Mason, Brian Nash down at IMG, Dwayne Killings at Albany. Those guys, I've been fortunate to work with some great guys in this business. And, those guys have kind of put me in the place in order to be successful. And, those are the guys that, mean the most to me in that regard and winning the award.
So we've got a 7-game win streak to talk about here with your team. You're 11-5 overall, 3-0 in the conference, heading to Memphis for a big game. We'll get to them in a second. This is the program's first 7-game win streak in 11 years. What's been at the heart of all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just speaks to the consistency of our guys. You know, the season is a roller coaster every year, I feel like, in college basketball. And, you know, when you look back to our last loss against St. Joe's and you're up, and then, you know, they hit that shot at the buzzer and, you know, you feel like everything's going downhill. You know, but credit to our guys, their consistency of who they are every day in practice, in their preparation and their work ethic, you know, 1 through 15. You know, I think has allowed us to kind of go on this run right now, you know, and looking to keep it going.
So I remember chatting with you when you guys first got Jordan Mason. I know that every coach, you know, you like every player you get, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be recruiting them. But I remember you being particularly excited about him. And I think it's safe to say now that you guys probably wouldn't want to think about where you would be without him. He's been terrific for you guys this year. Take us back to how you kind of zeroed in on him in the portal and what you liked about him. Because again, you know, when the portal hits and you guys are trying to figure out who you can get, you know, what your rev share budget affords you and all that stuff. And he's one of a bunch of guards out there, and you guys have really struck gold with him. How did you land on him, and what has he meant to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, first, you know, you obviously watch the tape of a guy and kind of can see what he does. And, you know, what really popped out about him was, you know, his ability to get in the lane, his ability to play make for guys, which he's done for us this year. You know, and what really impressed me from his film at UIC was his ability to finish in the lane. You know, when you talk about scouting, you call it his layup package. You know, I thought that was really good. You know, so it kind of showed me that he had like some pure point guard abilities, but he was also able to score. He's had games where, you know, he's put up points and can be aggressive that way. And, you know, I think that fits really well with kind of how we play and what we do and the guys that we had around him in terms of surrounding him with some scoring, some shooting. And then just his personality, you know, talking to him on the phone, also his father, you know, who played college basketball, you know, you just kind of saw a guy that got it and kind of knew what he wanted to be in his last year. And he's definitely taken advantage of it.
So when you look at guys like Darian Ford and Gavin Griffiths, they were both obviously top 100 recruits. In Gavin's case, he was a top 25 recruit. And sometimes when it doesn't work out for guys like them at their first spot, they don't ever regain that form that they had in high school. In their case, Darian and Gavin have really, I would have to imagine, probably been most of everything you guys could have hoped for. Is that just as simple as them just getting reps and confidence and time?
Yeah, I mean, I think confidence is a big thing for guys like them. They've done an unbelievable job of their work ethic and their preparation since they've gotten here. You know, but I think that confidence piece has been key for them. And credit to them, given the opportunity. Confidence, you still have to take advantage of it and kind of seize that. And that's what they've done all year long so far. You know, and really looking forward to what they can continue to bring.
Did you know Gavin was as good a shot blocker as he's been for you? I know he had 13 blocks as a freshman at Rutgers, but I think what has impressed me and a lot of people have watched him play is it's not like all these blocks are just like weak side blocks with him just like swooping in. A lot of it has been good body control straight up and he doesn't foul. I mean, I think that's been a really impressive part of his game so far.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people kind of are surprised about when they watch him, if you watched him for the first time or haven't seen us a ton, is how athletic he really is. You know, he gets off his feet super quick, which I think really helps with his shot blocking ability. You know, and he has good timing, he has good feel, he has good instinct with it. He's a high IQ player, you know, but I think that kind of underrated athleticism that a lot of people don't really understand that he has, I think, you know, kind of sneaks up on people and allows him to do what he does defensively.
You won these last two conference games, despite Aiden Tobias and not really finding his rhythm offensively. He only took 4 shots against ECU, and I know part of that has come from foul trouble. What goes into the rest of it? Is part of that just this team kind of finding its way rhythmically offensively against ECU with Darian back on the floor? Does Aiden still need to kind of try to find another level of like initiating his own offense?
Yeah, I think like you touched on the foul trouble. You know, that has a big effect on a lot of things. And then when you get into conference play, everything kind of ramps up. I think you kind of see guys play, especially on the defensive end. I thought ECU played extremely hard. Something that, when you're watching them on tape in some of their non-conference games, you don't see as much. And I thought those guys did a good job of following their scouting report and how they wanted to guard us. But in the end, I think the foul trouble kind of got him out of rhythm. And it's something that, we know he'll get back. He's a very confident player, and he'll be ready to go.
I know you guys don't want to say anything officially yet, but let's reasonably assume you're going to be without AJ Smith and CJ Hines for the rest of the year. And if you are, you knew what you were getting with Messiah Gilliard as a rebounder, and he's giving you 5 last game, has already gotten you 24 offensive boards, and he's really going to have to play a big role for you in that, with the, that backcourt depth kind of thinning for you guys. How would you assess what he's given you guys so far at the midway point of the season?
Yeah, I mean, his voice in practice every day, his energy, I think has been great for our guys. When I talk about the preparation, and the consistency of, not only him, but our whole team in practice, I think he's a major factor of that. If you kind of watch us and kind of see what he does on the practice court, not only from a playing standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint, from a vocal standpoint, he really uplifts your practices at times and gets guys going. And, when we kind of get into these middle of the January, early February, a lot of the times they call it like, the dark days of college basketball when you get in the conference play at those times. You need a guy like that to, really uplift your team. And that's been great for us of having him being able to do that. And I think it's going to help translate in the games for him as well. Being the same person every day, and his consistency on the court is key.
And now being shorthanded in the backcourt has also meant, of course, more minutes, more opportunity from Cam Wallace. Maybe if things had gone differently with CJ and AJ, maybe he's playing a little less, but you guys are going to need him. He shot the ball well, 7 of 14 from 3. You recruited him. You know his game as well as anybody. I know we struggled a little bit the foul line, but we've seen some ups and downs, and he's a true freshman. How would you assess how he's played for you so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really proud of him. When you're a freshman and you're coming from high school, you've been the best player in your team for the last 4 years. He scored close to almost 2,000 points in his high school career. And you go through a lot of ups and downs as a freshman, especially a true freshman now in college basketball. And just love how he's responded to that, and just being ready. We let him know, hey, man, your talent is, undeniable. We know that. You got to be ready when your opportunity comes. And I think he really kind of got jump started when we played Davidson, gave us a huge lift in that game in the first half, and we're looking for him to, keep taking advantage of the opportunity when it's given to him, whether it's, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, or 20 minutes, just being ready every time his number's called.
You guys made the decision to move Baba to the bench, and it looks like it was the right move. He's averaging 5.6 points and 3.3 rebounds in conference play. He's also dished out 4 assists in those 3 conference games. You guys obviously feel comfortable running some offense through him. He shot 5 for 9 in those 3 games. I know he's had, he fouled out against ECU. He had 4 against Charlotte, but he didn't commit any fouls against UTSA. And it looks like, I don't know, at least from where we sit, that he's maybe starting to regain some of the confidence that he had last year. I know it sounds like the obvious thing, but how huge would it be for you guys at this point this season for him to start finding that rhythm that he had last year?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for him is, he's gotten real comfortable in his new role. I think it's taken a lot of, pressure off of him in a way. It's hard for younger guys. Like, we talked about all last year that he reclassified up and, came to us early. So if you think about it in that way, he'd really only be a freshman this year. And certain expectations come with a guy that, started every game as a freshman. And, for us as a coaching staff, it's really seeing the value he brings. I think, at times people want a guy to score and, get double figure rebounds. And you touched on the assists. And, I think that his value and what he does in our offense and kind of manufacturing some easy baskets for guys like Aiden and, D Ford and Jordan, off those cuts, is really undervalued for somebody that just looks at the stat sheet necessarily every night. But if you think back to the Davidson game, he throws that pass to Aiden with less than a minute left off the Iverson cut that kind of, gives us a big lift in the game and propels us to win. And there's certain things like that we look at as a coaching staff that we love that he does, every day for us.
Can I go back to that Davidson game for a second? Because, you touched on the St. Joe's loss. And, the cynic from the outside might say, okay, they had a couple of get-right games, against the D2 team, against the St. Francis team. It wasn't that good. But then you guys went down to Davidson. You beat a Davidson team that was 8-2 at the time on the road. Was that as much of a confidence builder for you guys at the time? Because again, like different team, different circumstances, it could have maybe started to go off the rails a little bit in December when things are a little bit more spread out and you're heading in over the break. And instead that game seemed to give you guys some confidence. Did it do that for you?
Yeah, I think 100%. Going into that environment in Davidson, getting a win over a program like them on the road with these guys, I think was big for us. We only had one true road game before that and going to Nova, which I thought we played well for the first 35 minutes, but we didn't finish the game. Same thing against Davidson. We needed to play a full 40 minutes, and I thought we did that. We did have some kind of ups and downs at some point in the game, but, we put it together and finished it out. And I think that was huge for us, really going forward. And I think that helped us in the opener versus Charlotte in the American Conference, and that really got us going.
So you got Memphis next. That's what you guys are preparing for this week. They played a tough non-conference schedule, but they're 7-8 now. They're coming off an 89-78 loss to FAU. Penny Hardaway sounds frustrated, but I'm guessing as a coach that you guys might have that mentality where you might be thinking, great, now they're going to come back home with a chip on their shoulder and wanting to play hard. Is that one of the things that goes through your mind when you're on your side of this?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Memphis is a talented team. Like you said, they played a really challenging non-conference schedule. Even with some of their exhibitions before the season, they played some really tough teams. But, the way they play, trying to turn you over on defense, offense, they got a bunch of guys that can score at all three levels. They're an extremely dangerous team. And, especially playing at home, that's a great environment down there. So we just got to come ready.
Doug McDaniel leads their backcourt, and then you got Aaron Bradshaw from Camden, who's 7-1, hit 3 threes against FAU. Beyond those guys, give me a guy that could wreck the game for you a little bit that people up here maybe don't know as much about that you have to be mindful of.
I think a big difference maker for them at times is, on the defensive end is Zach Davis. Long athlete, is really effective in their press. I feel like when he's had big games, they've really gotten going. And then offensively, I would say Sincere Parker. He's a transfer from McNeese State. Has the ability to go off for 20 points. He's a guy that can really affect the game offensively for them.
Bobby, final question for you. How did you guys spend the better part of this last week when you have a week off and classes haven't started yet for the guys? How do you pace out when you have a week off leading into a game like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're coming off a game like East Carolina that was, extremely physical, we wanted to get guys some rest at first and make sure their bodies were healed up and healthy, and then, you spend a day focusing on ourselves. What do we need to get better at? And then you shift your focus to Memphis and kind of just touching on little points every day, that are going to be important in this game coming up.
All right. Good luck, Bobby. Thanks for taking some time with us. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks a lot, John. Go Owls.
So what do we think, guys, heading into tonight's game? I know that Memphis is 7-8, but they're still talented. I still think if they go down there and win, I think there's a segment of the fan base that's like, as I said last week, hey, glad they're on a win streak. Wake me up when they beat somebody. I think you should wake up if they win this game because I know that Memphis is 7-8 is 7-8. They've still got talent. They've still got some playmakers. Kyle, I'll start off with you. What would this win mean for them if they can get it on the road down in Memphis?
Yeah, I think this is I'm not gonna say their first, but their latest barometer. Where if they go out and they win this game, then I think you can, like we talked about this last week, where you can squint your eyes and you're like, maybe they are a bye team, maybe they are a double bye team in this conference. Like maybe there's a chance to that. Like I said, I don't think Memphis is as good as they have been in the past. Although every time I say that about a team on this scoop, they turn things around. So who knows? But they're sloppy. It's basically Doug McDaniel and the Tigers. Like Tim, he plays a lot. And then everybody else is just like hockey lines. Like they'll go 11, 12 deep. Like they are a deep team. You see former friend Quante Berry in there in that 10 to 11 man, 12 man rotation.
Yeah.
I think it would be like Memphis is the marquee basketball program in this conference. Regardless of what the record shows, they are the marquee basketball program. So winning this game on the road, I think, would open some eyes that Temple's hot start and hot stretch isn't a fluke. If they go out there and they just get stomped, like they lose by 20, 25, they just look sluggish. Memphis forces turnovers a lot. They have a lot of steals. If they just go out there and it kind of just like gets steamrolled, which Penny Hardaway is not above kind of running up the score. If that happens, then then I think all the critics and the cynics are just going to be galvanized in their take that Temple just hasn't played anybody.
They are on a 7-game win streak, but yet they haven't really played anyone like that great. You play Princeton again, Georgia in court, Davidson, and then two of the worst in the American Conference, and then Charlotte. It's not really going to like provide like a lot of like optimism, being like, okay, this is something that they can like extend for the rest of the year. But I do feel like this win would be really, really good just for a program. Yeah, you are getting 8 wins, but you are beating a team that won the American Conference last year. That would be huge for them. Also, I do not think that a win at Memphis is really that out of a realm of possibility, just because, yeah, they did lose to FAU, but they barely beat a Rice team that is not that good at basketball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they struggled in a very sloppy game against North Texas.
They're good at other things.
Yeah.
It's just not basketball.
Yeah. Their 2 American Conference wins came really, really sloppy against teams that are not that great and are at the bottom of the standings of the American Conference right now. If Temple can kind of just play kind of games that we've seen them be able to play at times, I feel like this is probably the most connected Temple team that we've been able to see in these last 3 years under Adam Fisher. What year one to watch, just because of how you had to rebuild that team after losing almost all your stars, and just rebuild a team in the first year of a head coach. Second year, as much as they showed flashes, injuries kind of derailed this team, and you kind of see that with their guard depth this year. But it just feels like this core 5 right now, when they're on the court, they have kind of shown the most chemistry that I've seen under Fisher, where it's like, okay, if someone's not making a shot, okay, it can be Gavin's turn, it can be Darian's turn. Jordan Mason has been able to help this offense in a way that we haven't really been able to see, just being able to, just his playmaking ability, where it's like, don't really care about scoring. I can get 10, 12 points, but okay, I'm okay with getting like 7, 8 assists, be okay with passing it. So I do feel like a win wouldn't really shock me, but I have seen them go inconsistent. They're going cold stretches on offense where their defense kind of has to like will them to keeping the game within reach and within reason. If they can kind of keep it away from that, then it wouldn't shock me if they win today.
I think that the point you made there that I want to talk about is the only real like true hostile road game they've had this year was at Nova, right? Like, yeah, they went to Davidson. There was 1,800 people there. Like, it's a familiar atmosphere for Temple. Playing at Memphis, like the FedEx Arena is a legitimate, like there's going to be 9,000, 10,000 people there. When they played at Nova, their like tertiary options didn't show up. Like Gavin Griffiths had 3 points, and that's when you saw like they were up with 15 minutes left in the second half, and then they scored like no points the rest of the way. Like their offense just went stagnant, and Nova's talent discrepancy took over. In order for Temple to win this game, you're going to need a guy like Gavin Griffiths to go out there and make, have 18, 20 points, which, I mean, to his credit, he's very capable of. I mean, he's on a hot streak. Like, their offense, I feel like he's just the most important person on their team offensively because he just takes so much pressure off everybody else when he's hot from 3. So,
okay, I'll be interested to see how they defend a kid like Aaron Bradshaw, played at Camden High School. He's on his, 3rd school in as many years now.
And Tariq Ingram. Off the bench from Ryder.
Yeah, so I mean Bradshaw, I don't want to say that like he always looks to take threes, but he went 3 of 3 from 3 in the last game. He's 7'1", 215 pounds, so he doesn't just live in the paint. So I don't know how much they'll switch if they start Jemai on him, but Gavin is, I don't know. I mean, Gavin's been a really, really good shot blocker. You just heard that's one of the things I talked to Bobby about. It's not just these weak side blocks. And Kyle, I think you talked about this last week, where he's been good with his body control. Like some of these blocks are just straight up maintaining good position, doesn't foul people. it's still a really, really, really intriguing matchup for them. No matter how much you want to pick apart Memphis, and again, their record is what it is, but as Kyle said, it's really the next biggest road environment that they're going to go into. So a huge
Look,
game. And go
this
ahead.
sounds weird. Sorry, it sounds weird to say after he just had a big game against FAU. Like Aaron Bradshaw, like played really well against FAU and had 21 points. I
He's been
feel
inconsistent.
like they match up better with a Memphis team that has him as the big than they
Mhm.
have in the past when they have some of these like 6'10", 260-pound centers.
Yep.
Like I feel like it's easier to game plan defense against the guys that live on the perimeter than it is just like a true intimidating force in the paint.
We talked about it heading into the ECU game, but Temple wins that game, but they didn't do much to defend ECU's big there.
But I mean, Bradshaw, to his point, like he made 3 of 3 against FAU. He had an attempt at 3 in 4 games before that. So
Yeah.
like, it's really just like, can you force him outside? And if he does
Mhm.
want to bang down low, then like Babatunde gives up height to him, but he doesn't give up weight to him. Like he's a heavier
No.
guy than like I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. The game within the game, John.
So we're going to talk about this Temple women's basketball team that is they're in some trouble right now. They are not playing well. Diane Richardson called Temple's 71-58 loss to Tulane Tuesday night a quote piss poor performance. She did not have players speak to the media afterward. Colin, you covered the game for us. We're going to turn this over to you, my friend. This we have alluded to the fact that Diane has sounded frustrated for quite a while. You guys have told us that you think they have the talent. It's a matter of them just more or less getting things together. Something is clearly not clicking there. And I like Diane, I respect her, but whatever message is there, it's not getting through. And what's going on here? Other than
It's
the
just
fact that it's not good.
it's definitely it's really I don't think what anyone really expected from a team that was picked to finish fourth in the American this year. They finally had some expectations after a 20-win season, and I think it's been since the loss to Drexel in the Big Five, where it's been 2 or 3 times where Diane's kind of echoed the sentiment that they aren't playing Temple basketball. She said it after the UTSA loss on January 3rd. They didn't play Temple basketball until the fourth quarter. I think she said it after they lost. It was like 59-52 to Drexel in the Big Five Classic. And then I think that frustration really just boiled over in the post game press conference after the Tulane loss, where called like his poor performance, said that they can't let teams come to the Accor Center and do what Tulane did to them. She said they didn't go after 50-50 balls. They weren't laying their buys on the line for rebounds. They got rebounded 39-31. And it's just overall, like, I think it's just frustrations that the kind of sentiment I've been kind of seeing from her is that players are kind of looking for other people to do the job. Players are looking for blame elsewhere. It's kind of what she's echoed against after Tulane. And you can kind of see there's like a real lack of urgency on the court. And it was especially evident in the last minute against Tulane. They were down by, it was like 8 to 10 points, like a difficult game, like score to come back from, but they were still like fouling and trying to, extend this game. And they gave up 2 offensive rebounds on missed free throws. And then Tristan Taylor can't get the ball in bounds on after they finally get a rebound off a missed free throw. Tristan can't get the ball in bounds, 5-second violation. And a little bit later, Jalisa Molina misses 2 free throws. And just like super poor late game execution. Again, not a lot of urgency happening there. The 3-point shooting, it would say shot just 5 for 23. Another thing Diane really talked about was that they believe they're going to eventually make threes, but I have to keep shooting them. But that's not what the staff wants them to do. But I mean, in 3 of these 4 American Athletic Conference games, they've shot worse than 25% from 3. And it seems like she's fed up there with that kind of aspect of them playing offense. It's still the quick shots, the quick threes. It's just like the talent's there, but Kayla Turner struggled. Tristan Taylor really didn't play that well against Tulane. Jalisa Molina had her best game of the year, and Diane still said after the game she didn't do enough. She thought she could have done more. And it's just kind of overall, it's like something's not clicking, something's not gelling on the court with the belief and the kind of like the fully throwing into like the Temple basketball belief that Diane has, and it's starting to show. I mean, they're 1-3 in conference play now.
They're in 10th place.
Yeah, I mean,
it's early, but that can change with so few games. But yeah, they're in 10th place in the conference standings.
Their next game, they're going to East Carolina, who I think is 4-1 in conference, and a team that always plays them really, really tough. So I mean, it's something where you're kind of out of time to fix this, and this feels like this has to be fixed now because now, I mean, they're in danger of not. I mean, again, it's super early, but I mean, they're sitting in 10th place. That's the last spot in the conference tournament right now. So I mean, it's kind of issues that you feel like kind of have to be fixed now. It's not something that they can keep, working at and chipping at. Like 1-3, that's a hole you got to climb out of now.
So Diane didn't, and she's entitled to do this. I think it would have been more interesting if you and the reporters who were there had access to asking the players because they are the ones on the floor. Diane had her reasons for not bringing players out after the game last night. Diane's been good at identifying the problem, and she's clearly upset. And we've talked about what some of the problems are. How confident are you that some of this actually gets resolved? And I think you said last week, I think we asked you like, who pulls this together? I think you said it's got to be someone like Jaleesa Molina. She plays well statistically, but in a loss, what is going on? Is this a team that does not get together? Are they not as connected? We talk about the men's team being connected. Is something's clearly going on here? Do you think that they get this figured out? And if so, what has to happen?
I think they have the talent to get this back together. I still think they have like 3 or even 4, arguably like all conference level talents. But I think
Who are those 4 all conference level players? Is it just
Kristen Taylor, Kayla Turner, Sinai Craig, and Jaleesa Molina all have the talent to be all conference players. They all, in their own right, have the ability to impact the game in a way that can push them to an all conference team. With like Tristan's facilitating and playmaking, we know Kayla Turner can score the ball, but she has really struggled with her efficiency the last 4 games. And I mean, that's kind of like, again, one of the main things Diane's talked about is getting Kayla confident because then she scored 36 points against Princeton, and we have not really seen that since. Like Sanaya Craig's rebounding and Jaleesa Molina, the way she can get out in transition, she can score, she can defend, but it's just like something's just not gelling together. I think it's belief. I think it's effort and kind of everyone fully bought into going after the 50-50 balls, crashing the glass every time, getting to the rim and not settling for 3-pointers. It's especially the 3-pointers where I feel like they keep settling for threes and long threes, even when they aren't going in. They just keep trying, they keep not going in. And they had success against Tulane getting in the paint early on. I think their first, like 5 of their first 6 baskets were easy buckets in the paint from Sinai Craig and Jaleesa Molina. And then they just got away from doing that. And it was just basically just 3-pointers after 3-pointers or long 2-pointers. And it wasn't evidently wasn't working. And they never went back to Jaleesa and Sinai. I think they can still fix it. I think they can still turn it around. I asked Diane like what she thinks is fixable. Like if this is fixable, does she think it's fixable? She said it is. Everyone just has to do their job and know their job, and like just fully buy into like what she wants them to do on the court, and that's rebound, get 50-50 balls, get to the rim, and they just have to do that. And I think I'm confident they can do that. I think it's possible, but again, the clock's starting to tick, I think, at this point.
But who on the actual roster leads that charge? Because it's been the same story of like the coach she's pissed off. I'll use the word pissed off. She described it as a piss poor performance. She's clearly has had it. And we've seen teams and organizations where the coach is mad, they're not getting their results, and there's that disconnect, and they're just not meeting in the middle. Jaleesa plays better. They still don't win a game, and that's not a good Tulane team that they lost to. Dude, who's the leader on this team? Who gets everybody together and says, "Hey guys, we got to get our crap together here"?
I think it boils down to the 3 captains. Like I think I mentioned Jaleesa and Tristan last week. I'm also going to throw Kayla Turner into the mix. Those are the 3 captains. Jaleesa and Tristan are the 2 longest tenured players. I think it's on them to pull all these younger players, these more inexperienced players with them to get in. Like they know what Diane Richardson wants them to play. They understand how Diane runs this program and wants them to play on the court. And it's on them to show that they are fully bought in, that they are doing everything, that they are doing the jobs that Diane has envisioned for them. And doing that will bring along the other players like that we haven't seen as much off the bench, like Brianna Mead, like Killian Sedano, like Felicia Jacobs. Like bring those players along with them by showing that you're doing the job. You're diving after every 50-50 ball. You're throwing your body on the line for rebounds. You're passing up a 3 to try to get to the rim or get the ball, closer into Sinai or Jaleesa. It's on those 3 players to really show that this is fixable, that they can pull out of this rut and get back, towards the top 6, 5 of the conference and bring these younger players along with them.
Well, we'll see if a piss poor performance becomes a lot better this weekend when Temple plays East Carolina. As Colin said, the clock's ticking and they've got to get things together. We will see if that happens. We're going to jump into the mailbag. Before we do, we're going to pause as we do to hear a message from our friend Mike Greenspan of Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. As we say each week, he's the best injury lawyer you could hope to have, but he wants to keep you safe in life and on the road, so you don't need his services. So we're going to hear from Mike and his weekly tip, and then we'll jump into the mailbag here and answer a few questions for you.
Do you have a teen driver in your household? If you do, you better make sure that your insurance company knows about it and that everybody who has a driver's license who lives in your house is listed on your insurance policy. Insurance companies are cracking down on people who thought they could get away with not letting the insurance company know that there is a younger driver on their policy. And look, understand this. If you don't give the insurance company that information, you could find that your kid is not covered in the event of a crash. Don't let this happen to you. Let your insurer know about any kid on your policy.
All right, we got a few mailbag questions to get to here. The first one from the screen name Stapler01. The portal process is fast and seems chaotic for both players and schools. What's your impression of how the Temple staff go about finding and signing players from the portal? Kyle, what's your crack at this other than, they've got, I think more often than not, a scouting department that is hit more than they've missed, especially on some of the D2 players and transfers. But how would you address this one?
I think it's honestly, in some ways, really similar to high school recruiting in the sense that, yep, Ryan's playing at Tulane right now, but I'm looking at his film. I'm seeing that maybe his depth chart position isn't where he thinks it should be. Maybe I'm talking to an agent that represents him that says, it's a possibility he's going to be in the portal. I feel like but let's just put it this way. By the time the portal opened up on January 2nd, they already had a list of hundreds of guys that they knew that they were going to pursue.
Yeah.
Levels of that, depth charts of that, from all that. Like, they had guys that, to be quite frank, let's just all be adults here. They've probably reached out to guys prior to them being in the portal via agents. Every single program is doing that.
It's like pro scouting. It's almost like you have pro scouting.
It's exactly that. It's advanced scouting. It's when you're scouting teams, especially teams in the conference, you're probably also saying, I know that their backup's good. He's not getting much burn right now. If that's a guy that if he entered the portal, we'd be interested and we'd have to move quickly on. I think that's why you see a lot of the guys from Penn State that ended up back at Temple, like Khalil Ahmad had relationships with all those guys. Like, he was at Penn State. He knows these guys. He knows when they enter the portal, whether or not they'd be a good fit at Temple, if they're looking for what Temple has to do. Like, it's still relationships. It's still trusting your scouting. It's just a lot quicker, because even though these guys could stay out there in the portal for months and they could add somebody late like Charles Calhoun last year, the vast majority of the guys that they're going to want are also looking to make those decisions very quickly in time to enroll for a spring semester. So I think they do a good job of identifying guys, and this is why I kind of cautioned last week of somebody was like, USF already has 10 commits. Temple got 20 in the span of 3 days. 4 days. It really was just once they started getting guys on campus and churning through this, they were going to be able to find somebody. You saw just how quickly it went from Harrington Maiden made his decision on Wednesday. It wasn't Temple. Temple had Jaxon Smolik on campus that day. That day, Jaxon Smolik came down from State College, and you're at Temple now, and then he commits, 24 hours later. Things just happened so quickly in this cycle.
Next question here from the screen named Matt Deebs. Any expected staff turnover or changes?
Beyond educated guessing, Football Scoop reports Adam Klein is coming back as an offensive analyst.
Yep.
So that is a change to the staff. Former very good Temple offensive lineman. Was a grad assistant under Stan Drayton. Spent last year with former Temple offensive coordinator Danny Langsdorff up at Oregon State. So he'll be coming back as an offensive analyst. That is a change to the staff.
I'm happy for Adam. He went away. He's a guy who loves this area, has grown up in this area, played at Episcopal, is from Springfield out in Delaware County, and got to go see life in another conference and gets to come back home. And he's a super, super, super smart guy. And as Kyle said, was kind of a fringe pro, didn't get to play in the NFL. But I think that's in terms of bringing back somebody in an analyst role, there are guys, I think, at every program who kind of try to hang around and try to stay at home and don't leave, and he left and is coming back. I think that's a really nice addition for the staff. But again, we've seen weird things happen. I mean, you saw where Stan lost DJ Elliott to the Eagles, and that was obviously not ideal. And again, DJ is an awesome dude, and again, our hearts go out to him. He lost his daughter recently, but that, stuff can happen, but so far so good for the staff. And
Right.
I can't read these guys' minds, but Tyler Walker might be at re-energized and saying, "Hey, I've got two new quarterbacks I can coach along with the three freshmen who are coming in." Al Johnson probably more pleased than not that he didn't have his entire offensive line taken from him in the portal, and now he brings in, and we'll segue this into our next question here, where like it's got some stability that could always improve on that offensive line. So far so good there. No staff
Real
turnover,
quick,
but
if there was going to be turnover at the lower levels, like position coach and stuff, now's the time. The Africa convention just happened. That's why there was that quiet period, a dead period, as the coaches were down in Charlotte. Those interviews happened there. Like I vividly remember finding out that Andrew Thacker was going to be Temple's linebackers coach because he, at the Africa convention, walked up to a source of ours and introduced himself as Temple's linebackers coach.
Yeah.
Like he was hired there and said, "Hey, I think I'm going to be your linebackers coach." Like these things happen quickly there. So if whatever an assistant coach was interviewing for another position at another school, it could very well have happened in the last 48 hours.
Very good point. A lot of networking goes on down there. So we'll see. Sunny Al, to close us out, has two questions. Number one, who will likely be the most impactful addition from the portal and why?
Ryan and Colin, go.
We kind of hit on him earlier a little bit. Jace Freeman from Stony Brook, who I was go with.
Good pick.
Especially with, yes, we talked about they did keep JoJo, they did keep Peter, they did keep Colin Chase. Most productive players on the offense was Kajaya Holloway for like a good month and a half last year. Both are 6'4", those lengthier receivers, bigger types of builds. I'm not saying he's going to be Kajaya Holloway where he had like 3 straight games of more than 100 yards. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying having him in an offense where you have JoJo Bermudez, who's listed at like 5'7", and like is more of like a I can beat you.
They don't list him at 5'7". He might be 5'7". They don't list him at 5'7".
JoJo?
Yeah.
They list him at what, 5'9", right?
5'9" or something.
Oh yeah.
Give my guy his credit.
But he's five. Me and him look at each other. I'm 5'7". Me and him look eye to eye with each other. And Colin Chase is a little bit smaller as well. Adding him in there, I think, adds a little bit extra oomph to the passing game. And he was productive at Stony Brook, so I could see him adding a lot of extra juice to this team.
I look at some of the defensive backs they brought in as I think my picks. I mean, they lost a handful of guys from that defensive backfield, especially like Jameer Jones, Ben Osweke, Jalen Castleberry, and like some younger guys still kind of in like playing in that secondary, but I look at a guy like maybe Sabor Kareem or Colin Dinkins, or like Jaden Gold. Like those are all like power 4 guys who are coming to Temple now. I think any one of them kind of grab maybe a secondary spot and kind of make an impact in a secondary that like definitely had its struggles last year, against some of the passing attacks they played. So I go with one of those new secondary players.
Other than Jace Freeman, I think the first name that comes to mind for me is Jameer Diaz from Sam Houston State. Just a guy who I think he's from what town in Jersey? Passaic, New Jersey. Yeah. I think he's a guy that like they're going to need to replace Cameron Stewart and Charles Calhoun and all these edge rushers. That I think it's easy to project him as like, look, our true defensive line. They want bigger guys, hand in the ground, take up space. The pass rush most of the time is coming from those edge rushers. I think he's going to plop into that role pretty easily.
Yeah, I thought about Diaz or Jalen Joseph from Lafayette seems like a nice pickup for them too. But I again, on paper, it looks like they did a nice job of filling some needs. It's easy to go to the quarterback position, but they needed to get better up front. They really needed to get better in the secondary. And let's reasonably assume that they were budgeting a lot more for quarterback and had to say, okay, now we've got to fill in some money for revamping that D-line, revamping that secondary, both areas that needed help. And maybe things pay off with some of the Penn State guys, but a guy like Diaz is a really intriguing ad for them. He was, again, we have not talked to him yet, but let's reasonably assume that he was like, okay, I hit my 4 games, I'm going to redshirt. And maybe he was like, yeah, maybe I want to go play for Casey Keeler up at Temple, get closer to home. He's got a chance to be a really good player. And a guy like Jalen Joseph, they were recruiting a lot of FCS guys, and you constantly saw like Jerry Rice Award finalists. That Jerry Rice Award goes to the top freshman at the FCS. So beyond the quarterback, I'd say those are some good names to look at. Sonny Al's second question: what is your way too early offensive line starting and defensive line prediction? Offensive line's easier. Defensive line, it's almost too hard to predict because Brian Smith is going to say we're going to be multiple. If it's 3 down, it's this. That's a question that's going to be much easier to answer in spring ball and certainly preseason.
When you look like down the stretch, like Cleo Poteet started the last like 4 games. That's just how they had adjusted their defense at that point. I think there's some returning guys like Russell Sykes played, Joseph Ozing played. I think you mixed them in with Caleb Artis, some of these other guys coming in, and I think edge rushing. I think we've talked about offensive line before. I mean, I think they have the 4 guys. And then whether it's Kevin Terry or Luke Watson or Ransom McDermott from Louisville, like those are the guys that tackle. I think they did a good job of setting themselves up for next year too with a lot of these guys. You talk about John Stone coming in and competing with Grayson Maines for center. Even if he doesn't get it, now you have a guy that you project into 2027. Everything can change in the transfer portal, but you project in 2027, like, well, that's probably your starting center. Like, I think they added a good amount of guys that are going to be starters at Temple. It just might not necessarily be this year. I'm going to say Luke Watson is the right tackle, and then everybody else I think is still the same. Jacoby Hills, Eric King, Grayson Maines, Jackson Pruitt.
Colin, Ryan, are you on that same boat? Like you're thinking the same 4 stars on the left line? Who's your right tackle? Is it Kevin Terry?
Kevin Terry? I agree with Luke Watson.
I'm with Luke Watson.
I agree with you, Kyle. Kudos, Kyle.
Even before they added Ransom McDermott, you're talking like with the 4 that returned, plus Luke Watson, plus Kevin Terry, plus Mouse Apollo. Like they had like 7 guys that have started games still in that offensive line room. So they have a lot more depth there than they've had in the past. Yeah,
unless one of your freshmen. How many? They bring in 2 tackles from the high school level.
From the high school level, Spencer and Watkins.
Yeah, well,
Tar plays a tackle, isn't he? They brought in 5 offensive line.
You got John Watkins from St. Francis.
Aiden Zilker.
Yeah, Aiden Zilker. But I think, again, they're talented high school players, and I think Temple was lucky to get those guys. But this might be, if there was ever a year for Luke Watson to emerge and say, okay, Luke Watson continues to stay healthy. They liked him when he first came in from St. Mark's. And so this would probably be his time to shine. Again, he's going to have to compete. He's going to be competing with probably think Kevin Terry, what Ransom McDermott's going to look like coming from Louisville. But again, at least we're as opposed to years past, we're talking about some names where like there's legit competition at that spot, as opposed to like, boy, you just hope that they can cobble together 5 competent offensive linemen there. Yeah, defensive line, probably too early to tell. You just have to see. Again, you have continuity at the defensive coordinator position. Again, unless something changes, I'd be shocked if Brian Smith was looking to move anywhere, unless it was for like an NFL job or something like that. That's another thing too, not to go far off track here. Like when there's NFL coaching turnover, if any of these guys ever have a chance to jump to like an NFL role, not that Temple has anyone on staff that's going to become a coordinator at the NFL level, but we'll see. But defensive line, that's going to be really interesting. Again, like that's where spring ball is fun, where if Brian Smith is retooling his defense and saying, okay, what is your base package still the same? How much are you going to be in base? And they've got some pieces there, but do they line up as a Jalen Joseph? Is he more like a 3-4 edge rusher as opposed to like an off-ball linebacker? We'll have to see. But I think that one's really kind of hard to predict right now, even if it's a much too early prediction. Well, that'll do it for this episode. Next week, we'll be talking about some more football portal editions. We'll find out if Diane Richardson's women's basketball team has started to figure out some answers. We'll be talking about 2 more men's basketball games to see if they are able to go down again, with some really, really heavy hearts to see if they can get a statement win against Memphis. And again, thanks for giving us some time to pay tribute to Bill Courtney, of course, and to Matt Vender at the outset of the show. Really appreciate you guys. Appreciate your continued support of the podcast. And we will talk to you next week.